support and believe in universal basic income.
All right.
I think it is imperative. I think we have gotten far too comfortable with leaving people behind.
Welcome back to another episode of It Is What It Is podcast. I am your host, Cody Kelly. Look, I am super excited about this. First of all, I have somebody that is need to know. This person is going to be a future congresswoman. It's going to affect our policies going forward. So I'm super excited that she wanted to come on the show. My heart is going out. You know, this is a time when you get real gas and you're just excited about that. But if you want to keep seeing amazing leaders, amazing influencers, you know what you got to do. Subscribe to the YouTube page at YouTube at CB_K. Follow me on Instagram at CVMK33 and on the business page at CVMK_global. And you know where to go. You know we have our own fitness supplement line. It's Chicago-owned, it's Black-owned. You got to get this only at www.cvmkglobal.store. Get your pre-workout today. Superpower, vegan proteins, all that good stuff is there. The summer's here. Get the body you deserve. But with that being said, I got to tell you about how I came to meet this person. So my church, Freedom Temple, hosted a forum of candidates to replace Congressman Bobby Rush's seat for Illinois' 1st congressional district. There were about 1,000 candidates, and I sat through it and watched, and I was like, yeah, no. And I was sitting there, but there was a couple names, this one being in particular, that really stood out. There was preferred candidates that had highlighted names that should not be mentioned, but there was just really a couple that really, to me, provided insight. Because when you're trying to have an elected official, we need to know who this individual is, what they stand for, what they're bringing to the office. So wrote her on LinkedIn. She was amazing. She said yes. And now we're here with soon-to-be congressional Congresswoman Karin Norington-Reaves. And with that being said, Karin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I love your prophetic wisdom. Put it out for the universe, brother. Put it on out there.
That's it. You got to keep speaking it until it happens. That's it.
Speak it into existence, right?
That's it. Well, look, I'm excited about this. I have a few questions, right? Because as I mentioned before the show, and I had to wear these glasses to make me look intelligent because I know I was going to be on with you. I didn't even know I was living in the 1st congressional district. I was like, Bobby Rush is probably not, my congressman. Because I vote in everything, but like sometimes you get to the ballot box, I'm just checking names, and then I'm gonna be honest with you. I probably shouldn't admit this. When I don't recognize a name, I Google. I take my phone with me and I Google, and I'm like, okay. I literally give a 30-second glance and make a decision. That's the worst possible way probably to make, candidate decisions, but it's true.
Listen, at least you're Googling. I mean, some people get in and play eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I know some folks who vote for names that sound of a particular persuasion, right? So, so at least you Google. I give you credit for that.
I appreciate it. But at the event, you really stood out and you answered the questions in depthly. You didn't shy away from anything. And you weren't afraid to be different. We had it was crazy because like one guy was like a serious like Trumper, and I mean like everything was it was just a lot of moving parts.
It was a lot.
There's a lot of moving parts there. But I have some of my own questions because I want to know, right? Like, what is all this about? So my first question to you, and it's simple. We got the January 6th committee going on right now. Chicago has about 30 different names that just dropped in for mayor. I don't know, from Paul Vallis to Gary Chico to just the whole host. Willie Wilson is running again. I mean, it just seems like anybody with a Twitter handle is throwing their name in the in the race. And why get involved with this political monstrosity?
So listen, I think that everybody has their own motivations for running. I can't speak to what anybody else thinks or why they decide to do this. It is so trite to say, I have a heart for service or I love people. I will say this. I'm in this race because I feel like our district, this moment in time, is a crucial moment in time, not only for the 1st congressional district, but for our country. our democracy is at stake. And so I am in this because of my depth and breadth of policy experience, from public education to public health to public utility regulation to, the last 11 plus years doing workforce development and economic development. I'm in this race because I think that economic development is just the core. We have a very diverse district, from city to, urban to rural to exurban to suburban. And the common thread for everybody is economic development and just the economy overall. And so I know that my depth and breadth of experience can be brought to bear to impact that. And I decided to put my hat in the ring. And I had a conversation with Congressman Brad Schneider a couple of weeks ago. And he's like, how are you? How are you feeling about everything? And I said, look, I think something's wrong with me. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I talked to an elected official and she was just like, oh, campaigning is horrible. It's awful. And I said, but I'm actually enjoying this. And he said, well, then it's your jam. He said, if you get energized by doing this, then you know that you're in the right place. So I'm in the right place. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel called and led to do this.
I like that. Call and led. That's not a phrase I hear too often. Usually, as you stated, a lot of times when you ask these questions, it's always about, the service, and I care about the people. And I think it's hard to, I won't say believe candidates, but it's hard to trust them because everybody does have their own goals, right? And it's fair. Every human being should have their own goals. Nobody's taking that away from anybody. Yeah. But it feels like politics now has become like a LinkedIn profile page, right? Like it's the next gig to the thing, right? Like I start here and then I'm gonna be senator and then I'm gonna run for president, right? Like it's not like my job is to serve the people and I'm in the fight until I can't do it anymore. It almost seems like, it's just another notch. So what is separating you? Like to me, the only three candidates that really to me connect and have an understanding of what needs to be done is you, Jonathan Swain, and State Senator Jackie. What, even in that little criteria, because that separates you from the other 300 that are running, what makes you different than your peers?
And it's funny, you say 300. Typically people say to me, oh, who's in that race? And I say, no, who's not in that race? Sometimes I say, you mean the 1,993 people? So yeah, you're being generous. A couple of things. First of all, it's interesting that you named those three folks as the ones who stood out to you. I have tremendous respect for Jackie Collins, and I feel like she has integrity and character and a moral compass that I think is lacking in politics generally. I think I share that with her. Jonathan is very smart. Obviously, he's got both an MBA and a JD. Sometimes I listen to him answer questions, and I'm like, oh, that's a really great answer, right? But what sets me apart is my experience. So what I hear from people throughout the district are two big themes that sort of resonate with them. One is economic development. The other one is around violence and crime. And for me, one is a big part of the cure for the other. And out of all the candidates in the race, whether it's the small pool that you just identified or the larger pool, I'm the only one with a significant substantive record that you can touch, a tangible record of demonstrated outcomes with respect to economic development, job creation, and quite frankly, violence mitigation. And so I think that is what distinguishes me. It doesn't hurt that I've been endorsed by Congressman Rush because of that record, right? But I think, my record of job creation, the fact that as the founder and CEO of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, that I was with my team's, obviously with my team's support, but with my leadership, was able to place more than 100,000 people in employment. It matters. And it wasn't just about putting people in any old job. It's putting them in career pathway opportunities. It was the relationships that I developed with the private sector, the relationships I developed with the philanthropic sector. I'm the only person in the race that has brought together, government, private sector, philanthropic, in order to actually create lasting, substantive impact for our communities throughout Chicago and Cook County. So that's what distinguishes me from the rest of the pack.
I like that. Let's hit upon that economic growth and development. So Lyndon Baines Johnson, former President Lyndon Baines Johnson, had this idea of a great society, that basically you could eradicate the ills of society through economic incentives, economic progress and development. Somehow we shifted focus and got away from that, and instead of going past 1968, now it feels like it's 1868 in some instances. And we're not hearing anything about true economic development. The Bureau of Labor Statistics are always reporting these record low numbers, but it seems like it's falsified information. Out of that percentage, if it's 4%, 4.3%, however the president says, what percentage of that are those jobs are actually making above a certain number fiscally, right? And then that.
I thought you were going somewhere else with this. Now I was about to snap you up, in a positive way. I mean, I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I'll tell you in a second. Go ahead. Sorry.
So no, they're good. So I guess for me is, how do you implement change economically? Because it feels like it's more of a talking piece than a real solution.
Okay, so a couple things. One, where I thought you were going on the BLS thing, is the data that they give is the best data they can access, right? So there's this concept of garbage in, garbage out. So when you got bad data in, you can only do but so much with that bad data. So where I thought you were going was around the unemployment rate, the unemployment numbers, because now they're saying we're at 6% or 8%, whatever it is. I never put any stock in it, because what I know is that when you slice those numbers by race, by gender, by demographics, right, by geography, those numbers are just astronomically different. So when we look at Black men between the ages of 20 and 35 or 21 and 35, and we point to specific communities in Chicago or in the south suburbs, the unemployment rate, I've seen it as high as 40%, right? And so those numbers that the BLS spits at us do not do us justice when it comes to understanding the depth of the challenges that we face. Now, economic development as a talking point is not a talking point for me from my life. It has been, honestly, my life's work. I know what it looks like to make lasting impact and change for people. Sure. For some, you can do it in these massive ways. So, for example, when my team and I worked with Mariano's, and this may sound like a funky example, but I want to explain it. When we work with Mariano's, we screened 3,500 people. 1,500 got placed through that first tranche of stores that they opened. But they weren't just placed in low-level entry wage jobs. We placed all the way up to managerial positions that were starting at $100,000 a year. And placing folks in the retail sector, you grow. Within 3 months, you can be moving up and moving into managerial positions. And so I know the difference that makes in somebody's life. And for every one person that you employ, you impact 5 people minimally. And so the way you can think about that is not just the people in their home. So if I have a household with 2 kids, I'm impacting my kids because they're eating better, their needs are being provided for, our transportation is more solid. I also help to support another family member, right? So then that's how you get to that number, those 5. It can also be the neighbor down the street who says, "Hey man, where you working? Well, how much do you make there? Well, do they have any openings?" And then that person, goes on and gets hired there. Manufacturing jobs in Chicago, the primary way
What's up? I'm super pumped. Just got done with another workout. It's your boy CVMK33. Connect me on Instagram and on the business page at CVMK_global. You know how I get through it. You know how I get that pump looked. Best pre-workout on the market. www.cvmkglobal.store.
That folks get hired is through word of mouth. It is their neighbor, it is their friend, it is their family member. And so that economic development, that economic impact is not just a talking point, it's real. Now, the challenge for us and the challenge for anybody in this congressional seat, the challenge for any elected official is to do this work at scale for a true impact. And so scale is when you have something like a Mariano's where they're open up, at the time they were like, look, we're projecting to open up 26 stores, right? So there's huge opportunities there. Scale is, Hospitality Hires Chicago, an event that my team and I dreamt up 5 years ago, where literally we're bringing in hundreds of people at a time for hiring opportunities. But the other way that you get to scale is something like Discover, where they started off with 100 spots and then they grew that to 150, and that's going to grow to 1,000 over the next couple of years. So what I know works is that one-off, but what we have to do in order to have the deeper impact is to grow that one-off to scale. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think scalability is the focus. Some would push back and say, basically the market, and I hate this pushback. I hate this conservative talking point, but the market can't support it. If you demand an increase in wage, right? Mm-hmm. So if everybody is at 100K or higher, the cost of everything therefore increases with it, or the employer can't afford to keep them at that pay raise, which is interesting because the ones that say that are the billionaires, and it's like, this is just not adding up. But is the answer dual-sided? And what I mean by that, like, is it the scalability and is it some type of subsidization? And what I mean by that, like, is a living wage necessary at this point? Do Americans need a guaranteed income?
So I completely support and believe in universal basic income. Right. I think it is imperative. I think we have gotten far too comfortable with leaving people behind. And there are people in our country that simply don't have. Yeah. It's not that they don't have to the extreme. And it ought not to be okay with us. We ought to care more about human life than we seem to demonstrate. What is called the minimum wage now and what people are patting themselves on the back about, to me, is a wage that you pay a teenager, $15 an hour. $15 an hour translates to $30,000 a year. Now, when I graduated from college in 1991 and became a teacher in the Teach for America Teaching Corps, my salary out of college in 1991 was $26,000 a year. $30,000 a year is not what you can support a family on. And I don't call that a living wage. I call that a surviving wage. And what I think people are entitled to is a thriving wage, a wage that allows them to take care of themselves, their family, pay a car note, have a decent roof over your head. I'm not saying that everybody has to live, up on a hilltop and in a McMansion. But everybody should be able to live comfortably and to support themselves and their family members. They ought to be able to afford childcare. They ought to be able to afford health care. They ought to be able to afford prescription medication. They ought to be able to afford to feed themselves and to pay for gas. I mean, we got gas approaching $7 a gallon at this point. And so, the people that get most hit by that are the people who have the least. And we can and should do better. So yes, I believe in universal basic income. I believe that, the wages that we're saying pass as a minimum wage are not significant enough. I'm not saying everybody has to be at $100,000 a year, but there is a middle ground. I think, we use these extremes as the example. And when we do that, we water down the arguments on both sides.
No, that's fair. I totally agree. I think I'm definitely a proponent of universal basic income. And it's crazy because even $100,000, but when you got student loans and whatnot, I thought, man, when I got out of college, I was like, I told my wife, I was like, ooh, my goal was I just got to make 30,000, and I'd be pissed off if I made 30. Like it's what it takes to. And we're not talking about the Lamborghini lifestyle, living out Lake Forest. We're talking about going to the grocery store and making a choice between General Raisin Bran and the actual Raisin Bran, the purple box, right? Those simple decisions that don't need, an economics degree to make, that all, citizens, every human being should be able to do without thinking twice about it. And it seems like we've politicized decency, like just decency. Not
Absolutely.
Even, yeah,
we have, when, oh gosh, I can't even name which one because there's so many who just didn't make any sense. But when Republicans started talking about banning certain foods as being, permissible purchases with EBT, and SNAP dollars, I was like, really? So people, and now, rotisserie chicken is classified as non-food.
Oh, wow.
So, you go to the prepared meals section. So you can't even buy a prepared meal because somehow that you're not worthy of that. I mean, that is really what it's saying, and they went into this big thing about, oh, people shouldn't be buying lobster. Nobody was buying lobster with.
No, they haven't even been to the Jewel on 35th. Nobody buying lobster out there, Jewel. They trying to. They don't really know Chicago issues.
It's just the most ridiculous thing. But I'm like, if it's food and you want to feed yourself, you ought to be able to buy it. It's just, oh my gosh. Anyway.
No, yeah, absolutely correct. Look, I got one more question. I know we're running out of time. Shirts on or shirts off? You want to look and feel your best. Summer's here. You know how you looked at. Be at your best. The best pair of best supplements. I got with me the best pre-workout on the market. Superpower. Only at www.cv, as in Vernon, mkglobal.store. Whether it's shirts on or shirts off, you want to look and feel your best. Best intro and post-workout recovery. These are saucy. Only at www.cvmkglobal.store. Safety. I don't even feel like. This is sad. I don't even feel like safety is even a Chicago issue anymore with the recent events.
It's a national issue.
Yeah, it's a national issue, and it's like it's almost where I think in times past, you had one group that said yay, other group was nay, but now it's so complex. You got all these different subgroups, and depending on who you talk to, you can really become offensive. We start saying, hey, we need to regulate the Second Amendment, and they'd be like, what? It is like, wait a minute, I'm not saying eliminate, I'm just saying that nobody needs access to an assault rifle. No, I feel like if I can pay car insurance and I got to get my car registered and do all these things, annually, you should, as a gun owner, have to register some type of format. Listen, what does gun safety look like nationally?
So two points, maybe three. I got a notice from People's Gas that said if I didn't let them come in my house and check my meters, that they were going to turn my gas off, right? So they do this every couple of years. You have to have an inside safety check. We regulate driver's licenses, buying alcohol, your utility, your public utilities, more than we regulate access to a military grade weapon that was intended to destroy people. Yeah, I mean, let that sit for a second. The weapon was intended to visit death and destruction upon people. Period. There is nothing. If you look at the leaked opinion
Right.
from Roe v. Wade,
Right.
what the court appears to be hanging its hat on is that abortion is not expressly considered in the Constitution. Neither is carrying a military grade weapon by a civilian. Everybody knows if you want to be a strict constructionist around, the way you want to be focused exclusively on strict original intent of the Constitution. Everybody knows that the Second Amendment right to bear arms had a very specific purpose and a very specific historical reference that has nothing to do with carrying a military grade weapon right now.
Mhm.
I believed that after Sandy Hook, after 25 and 6-year-olds
Yeah.
were slaughtered, I believed wrongly that this country would stand up and do something when babies were massacred. And here we are 10 years later, and not one, not two, not three, not four, not 50, not 100 mass shootings, but hundreds of mass shootings later, we are still having this discussion. What is wrong with us? So the House has passed two bills that have just gone to the Senate to die, to just sit and not be moved on. And I hesitate to say this because I know that people will say I'm advocating for anarchy, and I'm not. But I do believe that we are going to have to take to the streets and literally sit in the streets in DC to get common sense gun laws passed. There is no reason in the world that military grade weapons should be in the hands of civilians. I think we have got to punish straw purchasers, and I think we have got to eliminate the ability to produce ghost guns. Now, listen, once we get all that out of the way, we are not going to legislate nor incarcerate our way out of the crime issues, the
Right.
violence that we see. But we can educate, we can empower, and we can employ our way out of it. We can actually provide mental health services to people. We can actually deal with the generational trauma that is causing the acting out that we're seeing. We can actually address the root cause of the violence, right? And address the issue of access to guns.
Well said, and totally agreed. Look, I appreciate this. I do believe that this gun epidemic, this violence that is ridiculous, needs to be something that we can't debate about. We just have to do.
Got to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially when we look at other countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, these other modernized first, let's say not third world, but first world countries that have basically less deaths per year than we'd have in a summer here in Chicago. And
we have in a week.
Yeah,
I mean, they're having a weekend.
Yeah, and it's absolutely outrageous that they figured it out, and we're still debating that. Does it even exist?
There was nothing to figure out. You know what they did? They banned military assault weapons. They decided that everybody didn't need to have access to a gun, and they don't mass produce them. I mean, it's just the bottom line. It's really not that hard.
That's
And kudos to the families at Sandy Hook. You know what it took for them? They bankrupted Remington.
Economic justification for everything. And that's definitely the stride that we need to focus on. Karin, this has been an amazing episode. Where can the people connect with you, support you? Obviously, we know the primary is coming up, but where can they support you?
They can support me at votekarin.com. So vote, Karin, Karin with an I, votekarin.com. I welcome the support. I welcome the vote on June 28th. I am vying to become your Congresswoman.
Awesome, y'all. Get out and vote. June the 28th is going down. No excuses. If you do not vote, you cannot complain. That's the cradle of every argument. Support. Go to the votekarin.com, support her on the website, support her in the polls. Don't just say, hey, I got your back. You know, we do, hey, I got you. And then on the 28th, be knocked out, be like, man, next time, man. You know, right? Yeah, go support, go vote. And if you want to keep seeing amazing leaders like future Congresswoman Karin Norington-Reaves, you know what you got to do. Hit me up, Instagram, CVMK33, and on the business page, CVMK_global, YouTube. We're all great podcasts. It's Seen, Heard, and Felt, YouTube at CV_K, and the website, because I'm not going to let you get away with it, where the best sports supplements are, www.cvmkglobal.store. And until next time, guys, thanks.